The morning sun usually promised a day of play, but today felt different. Bluey, the gentle white and brown Pomeranian, sensed it from his spot on the rug, his head tilted. Grandmother's movements were too deliberate, her voice a little too soft. Instead of cheerful food bowls, the ominous plastic travel carriers appeared, putting his calm nature on instant high alert. While Bluey was a bundle of quiet concern, Daisy, the tiny red toy poodle, was a joyous whirlwind, completely oblivious to the looming carriers. Her world was her bright green squeaky ball, a tiny rocket of red fluff. She pounced and skidded, dropping the slobbery ball at grandmother's feet for a game of fetch, her tail wagging furiously, entirely missing her housemate's somber mood. Grandmother knelt, her joints protesting. "Come on, my sweet Bluey," she cooed with a reassurance she didn't truly feel. Vet visits were a necessity of loving them, but she hated this part. He crept forward, tail tucked low, trusting her completely, even as his instincts screamed a warning about the plastic cavern. A soft whine and a soulful look were his silent plea, but with a gentle nudge and another soft word, he relented and stepped inside. Getting Daisy the poodle into her carrier was another sport entirely. The moment grandmother turned, the game was on. Believing it was a new form of fetch, Daisy dodged around the furniture, green ball firmly in her mouth. It took 3 attempts, a cleverly disguised treat, and a surprisingly agile lunge to finally get the wriggling ball of fluff inside, where her muffled squeaks immediately demanded her ball be returned. As the car rumbled to life, the journey began. From his carrier, Bluey sat perfectly still, a silent, stoic passenger resigned to his fate, the engine's low hum matching the anxious thrumming in his little chest. Next to him, Daisy's carrier was a riot of noise and movement. She yipped and scratched at the door, not from fear, but from the sheer injustice of being stuck in a box, separated from her beloved ball, while the world rolled on outside. The sign for Crestwood Veterinary Clinic loomed into view, confirming Bluey's worst fears. As grandmother carried them inside, a wave of new smells and sounds immediately washed over them. The air was thick with the scent of antiseptic, mixed with the unfamiliar musk of other animals. A large golden retriever whined softly from across the room, while a cat in a carrier let out a low, guttural hiss. Poor Bluey pressed himself into the very back of his carrier, trying to become as small as possible. This place was a library of anxieties, and he could read every single one. Daisy, however, interpreted the symphony of nervous energy completely differently. To her, this was a party. New friends and new smells. She bounced inside her carrier, her tail a blur, letting out excited yips that echoed in the small room. She saw the giant golden retriever not as a threat, but as a potential playmate of epic proportions. Her frantic energy was a bright island of glee in a sea of veterinary-induced dread. Grandmother reached down, tapping gently on the carrier. "Settle down, little one," she whispered, knowing it was a futile request for a dog whose default setting was pure excitement. "Bluey and Daisy?" a cheerful vet tech with a clipboard called out. The sound made it official. This was happening. Grandmother sighed, gathering the carriers. "That's us," she said, her voice bright for the dog's sake. The door opened onto a sterile hallway. For Bluey, the point of no return, but for Daisy, a brand new adventure. The exam room was small and cold, dominated by a formidable stainless steel table. When the vet tech unlatched Bluey's carrier, he crept out slowly, his paws uncertain on the slick linoleum floor. Instead of exploring, he made a beeline directly for grandmother, pressing his body against her legs as if to merge with her. He needed the anchor of her presence in this sterile place. Though he was a perfect patient, quiet and submissive, his rapid breathing and trembling body told the true story of his inner turmoil. Then it was Daisy's turn. The moment her carrier door opened, she shot out like a cork. The small room was her new playground.
She sniffed every corner, peeked in the trash can, and tried to scale the leg of the exam table. Her paws skittered in a tap dance of frantic investigation. The vet tech laughed. "Well, we have a live wire here." Daisy wasn't scared. She was processing. This place had to be sniffed, explored, and conquered. Her chaotic energy was a stark contrast to Bluey's terrified stillness. Dr. Evans, the veterinarian, entered with a warm smile and a gentle, "Hello, everyone." Ignoring Daisy's frantic licks, she knelt by the trembling Bluey at grandmother's feet. "And hello, Bluey. It's okay, brave boy." She offered her hand for him to sniff, a respectful act showing she understood his language of fear. Grandmother lifted Bluey onto the cold steel table. He shivered, but endured it with a quiet, moving dignity. Dr. Evans worked quickly, checking his heart, eyes, and ears, while murmuring encouragement. "What a good boy. You're doing so well." Bluey didn't struggle. He just fixed his gaze on grandmother, his eyes a beacon of trust, a silent promise he was tolerating this for her. Daisy's examination was less a procedure and more of a wrestling match. On the steel table, the tiny poodle was a wriggling, licking, tail-wagging machine. Dr. Evans laughed, trying to hear a heart beating at a hummingbird's pace. Skillfully holding her still for a moment, the vet commented, "She's a picture of health and happiness." Daisy wasn't difficult. Her effervescent personality simply saw the vet as a new friend to love, and the stethoscope as a new toy. "Just a couple of quick pokes for their annual shots," Dr. Evans announced, preparing the syringes. With the clinical sound of a tapping vial, the energy shifted. The playful part of the visit was over. Grandmother's hand tightened on Bluey's back. He and even wiggling Daisy paused, sensing this was no social call. Dr. Evans saw Bluey first. A vet tech offered a treat as distraction from the vet's quick shot between his shoulder blades. Bluey flinched with a tiny yelp, his eyes immediately asking grandmother why. She stroked his head, whispering, "Good boy, so brave." Instantly forgiving, he pressed into her hand. His trust had already conquered the scary moment. Daisy's vaccination was pure theater. Held gently, she was so focused on licking the vet's nose, she missed the poke. Then a scandalized shriek of betrayal. She wriggled free into grandmother's arms, trembling dramatically. Though the pain was minimal, she milked the sheer indignation for all it was worth. "Now for the microchips," Dr. Evans said warmly, holding up a small, sterile package. An important step for quick little ones. This chip, the size of a grain of rice, is injected right here in the scruff. Its unique number is registered to you. If they're ever lost and scanned, you get called immediately. It's their permanent ID, a silent guardian angel to bring them home. The microchip needle was slightly larger, but Bluey barely noticed the second poke, focused on grandmother's comforting hand. Dr. Evans was quick, finishing in under 5 seconds. A handheld scanner beeped reassuringly. "There we are," she said brightly. "Bluey is officially in the system." He took it like a champion. Nursing her wounded pride in grandmother's arms, Daisy was not thrilled about a second microchip. She wriggled in protest, so it took both grandmother and the tech to hold her gently but firmly for the brief moment. Her indignant yelp was pure complaint, not pain. The confirming beep meant nothing. After 2 mysterious pokes, this fun new outing was over. "And that's it, all done," Dr. Evans declared with a warm smile, and the tension in the room instantly vanished. A tech appeared with extra special treats, showering both dogs with praise for their bravery. Bluey accepted his gently, his tail giving a slow, tentative wag. But Daisy, her trauma forgotten at the sight of food, inhaled 3 in a row. The ordeal was over. They were vaccinated, microchipped, and officially very good dogs. While the dogs enjoyed their treats, grandmother stepped up to settle the bill.
The total was significant, covering wellness exams, multiple vaccinations, and both microchip registrations. But she didn't flinch. This quiet moment was a non-negotiable expression of her love, the unseen financial dedication required to keep them healthy and safe. With the carriers back in the car, the ride home was a world away from the tense journey there. The atmosphere was one of relief and quiet triumph. Bluey let out a long, slow sigh, exhausted but safe. Daisy, every last treat crumb licked clean, was finally quiet, her energy depleted by the morning's drama. Grandmother drove carefully, glancing in the rearview mirror with a soft, loving smile. Her precious cargo was safe and sound. The sound of the front door unlocking was the sweetest sound to Bluey all day. As Grandmother opened the carrier doors, he stepped out, immediately sniffing every corner and reacquainting himself with his safe space. Daisy, recharged by her nap, shot out to find her green ball, as if to confirm it had waited faithfully. They were home. The strange clinic smells were replaced by the comforting scent of their own territory. The ordeal was officially, completely over. To celebrate their bravery, Grandmother served a special meal, their favorite wet food, the kind usually reserved just for birthdays and holidays. The moment that rich, savory smell filled the kitchen, both dogs came running. Bluey, who was normally so polite, devoured his portion with enthusiasm. Daisy, true to form, finished hers in about 4 seconds and promptly tried to help Bluey with his. It was a simple but powerful gesture, Grandmother's way of saying, "You were brave today, and I love you for it." After their special meal, a profound exhaustion settled over the two little dogs. The vet visit's mix of adrenaline, fear, and excitement had completely drained them. Bluey curled into his favorite soft bed, his nose tucked right under his fluffy tail. Daisy, for once ignoring her ball, hopped onto the sofa to snuggle into the cushions beside Grandmother. Soon, the only sound was their soft, rhythmic breathing in a deep and well-deserved sleep. They were recharging, recovering, and safe at home. While the dogs slept, Grandmother updated Kevin and Tiffany. Vet visit a success. Both dogs, now tuckered out, were vaccinated and microchipped. Bluey was a brave soldier, and Daisy her dramatic self. Replies buzzed back instantly, thumbs ups from Kevin and hearts from Tiffany. Kevin replied quickly and practically. As Bluey's original owner, his deep responsibility now included Daisy too. For Kevin, love meant more than weekly visits and belly rubs. It meant ensuring Grandmother never had to worry about the financial side of their care. His quiet, constant support was the very bedrock of this arrangement. Aunt Tiffy's reply was a cascade of emotion for her poor babies. Bursting with pride, she immediately ordered special "I was brave at the vet" bandanas and a new toy. Her love was expressive and celebratory, often arriving in a cardboard box from an online retailer. While Kevin provided the practical foundation, Tiffany provided the flair, an endless stream of adorable outfits and exciting toys. It was her way of spoiling them from afar. Grandmother smiled softly. Her chaotic, fur-covered, wonderful new normal was supported by a triangle of care: Kevin's quiet reliability, Tiffany's joyful generosity, and her own day-to-day love, with these two little dogs at the very center. As the afternoon light softened, Bluey's paws twitched, chasing dream rabbits across a field of green, while Daisy let out a soft woof in her sleep, likely dreaming of endless squeaky balls. The vet visit was now a memory, a trial of a scary table and sharp pokes that they had passed, rewarded with love, comfort, and delicious food. They were safe, healthy, and profoundly loved by a family that revolved around them. And in the quiet of the afternoon, that was all that mattered. Kevin's support for Bluey and Daisy began long before vet bills, often late at night. As Bluey's original owner, he knew his Pomeranian had a sensitive stomach, so he didn't just buy dog food. He researched. He pored over veterinary journals, ingredient lists, and recall histories, creating spreadsheets that compared protein, fiber, and omega-3 sources. This was a scientific investigation, driven by his deep responsibility for their health. Kevin's research went beyond scientific data and into the heartfelt world of shared experience. He delved into online forums for Pomeranians, reading first-hand accounts about food allergies, skin conditions, and digestive issues. "My palms started itching less after we switched to a salmon-based food," one user shared. "Avoid anything with chicken byproducts," another warned. He absorbed this collective wisdom, filtering it through his analytical mind. He was crowdsourcing a health plan, piecing together the best possible diet from the trials and errors of a global community of dog lovers. After weeks of research, he made his decision. Not the cheapest or flashiest, but a small batch, limited ingredient food made for small breeds with sensitivities. Its primary ingredient was sustainably sourced fish, fortified with probiotics and antioxidants. He gladly paid the significant cost, setting up an auto ship so a new bag would arrive at his mother's door every 4 weeks. It was his quiet, practical way of saying, "I love you," every single day. A few days later, a heavy box landed on grandmother's porch. With a grunt, she dragged it inside. Inside was the large bag of specialized food Kevin had chosen. She read the label, impressed by the wholesome ingredients, but she didn't need to understand the science, just the love. This delivery was Kevin's care made tangible, a silent partnership in loving these dogs, and one less thing for her to worry about. Kevin's financial care went far beyond just food. On his computer, he kept a detailed budget spreadsheet he called the Bluey and Daisy Fund. It had a line item for everything: food, scheduled vet visits, grooming appointments, and even emergency vet savings. He even included a monthly toy and treat allowance. He meticulously tracked each expense, ensuring the fund was always healthy. But this wasn't about controlling money. It was about removing financial stress, so his mother could enjoy the dog's companionship without ever having to weigh a decision against its cost. His thoughtful planning provided peace of mind for everyone. When grandmother texted the vet amount, Kevin sent the money right to her. He couldn't hold Bluey's paw, but he could do this, his quiet, essential role as the pack's provider. Kevin's support also included the less glamorous necessities. On his lunch break, he would visit the local pet supply store. While Tiffany might be drawn to sparkly collars and squeaky toys, Kevin headed straight for the practical aisles. He'd stock up on heavy-duty waste bags, the dental chews their vet recommended, and specialized grooming brushes for a Pomeranian's thick undercoat. He was thinking about the daily realities of walks, dental health, and endless shedding, equipping his mother with the right tools to make her life just a little easier. But Kevin's most important contribution wasn't financial. It was his presence. Every Saturday, the dogs went wild for their guy at the sound of his engine. He'd be mobbed by a flurry of white and red fur. Daisy leaped for her ball, while Bluey, on his hind legs, gently tapped shins for his special greeting. This weekly ritual was the highlight of their week. After the chaos, Kevin always took a moment for Bluey. Sitting on the floor, the Pomeranian would melt into his lap for that one perfect scratch. Kevin was his original person, a deep comfort that settled his anxious little soul. Then it was Daisy's turn for fetch. She'd drop the slobbery green ball, vibrating with anticipation for Kevin's throw. For an hour she would tear after it, paws skidding, his connection with Tiffany's poodle. While throwing the ball for Daisy, Kevin and his mother would chat. She'd share funny stories, like Daisy burying her ball in the laundry basket, or Bluey's standoff with a squirrel. These visits weren't just for the dogs, they were the bridge connecting them, a shared reason to gather. A habit from his years as Bluey's sole caregiver, Kevin was always quietly observant. He scanned for any trouble, checking Bluey's coat for dry patches, his teeth for a dental chew, or watching if Daisy favored a ball. This gentle vigilance was an early warning system born from deep affection and duty. Before leaving, Kevin would always help with the dog chore. He'd refill the food container, too heavy for his mother, or change the water filter. He saw a need and filled it quietly, lightening her load, acknowledging that while caring for the dogs was a joy, it was also physically demanding. The hardest part of Kevin's visit was always the end. Bluey would seem to deflate, his tail low, and Daisy would stop playing. They'd watch his car pull away, a weekly heartbreak for two furry faces already waiting for next Saturday. As Kevin drove home, he'd often smiled to himself. The visits were grounding, connecting him to his mother and to the two little lives who depended on him. He felt the weight of responsibility, the financial planning, the health monitoring, but it wasn't a burden. It was a privilege. He was Bluey's person, and by extension, part of Daisy's support system. This role gave him a true sense of purpose, knowing that providing the best possible life for them was one of the most important jobs he had.
Miles away, Tiffany's support network buzzed with a different energy. Gifting was her love language, and her tablet was her primary tool. Curled on her stylish sofa, she'd spend hours scrolling boutique pet websites on a quest for pure cuteness, not practicality like Kevin. Her online cart became a treasure chest of tiny hand-knitted sweaters, sparkly collars with matching leashes, and whimsical toys, all adorable and often completely unnecessary. For Tiffany, making the dogs look cute was a vital expression of her affection. True to her word, her very first purchase after the vet visit was a set of matching bandanas. She found a custom shop and ordered 2 in a cheerful yellow fabric. In bold, friendly letters, they read, "I was brave today." She could just picture how adorable they would look. Bluey with his serious face, and Daisy, her perky ears peeking above the knot. It was a small thing, but it was a tangible piece of her pride and love, her way of honoring their milestone. In the days that followed, grandmother's front porch became a landing zone for Tiffany's generosity. A steady stream of boxes arrived, each one bearing a smile-shaped logo from a different online retailer. There were small padded envelopes with squeaky toys, and larger boxes containing plush new beds or elaborate puzzle feeders. The mail carrier knew the house very well. Grandmother would just shake her head with a found mixture of amusement and exasperation. "More presents from Aunt Tiffy," she'd announced to the dogs, who had quickly learned to associate the sound of a delivery truck with exciting new things. Every unboxing was a ceremony. Grandmother would sit on the floor as the dogs helped, Bluey sniffing politely at the corners, while Daisy tore out the cardboard, convinced the box itself was the toy. As grandmother revealed a new crinkly hedgehog for Bluey and miniature extra bouncy tennis balls for Daisy, the living room would become a whirlwind of fluff and squeaks, a testament to Tiffany's long-distance love for her furry niece and nephew. Grandmother dressed energetic Daisy in a tiny hand-knitted sweater. An adorable, ridiculous red mushroom, she chased the confusing large pom-pom. Bluey watched with dignified curiosity, glad it wasn't him, as grandmother snapped a photo for Tiffany. Receiving the photo mid-meeting, Tiffany let out a squeal of delight, earning curious looks, and immediately set it as her wallpaper. This was her reward, the immense joy of seeing her babies looking so precious in things she picked out. Each photo was a postcard of happiness she'd helped create, keeping her connected and involved from far away. Oh, the toy situation was getting a little out of control. A large wicker basket in the living room was supposed to contain them all, but it was now hopelessly overflowing.
squeaky toys, rope toys, puzzle toys, and balls of every size and color spilled out onto the floor. It was simply impossible to walk through the room without stepping on something that squeaked. Bless her heart, Grandmother tried to rotate them, putting some away to keep them new. But Daisy had a sixth sense for where her favorites were hidden and would just whine until they were retrieved.
Despite an endless parade of new toys, Daisy's heart belonged to just one, her original, slobbery, slightly torn green squeaky ball. She'd bring it to Grandmother for a toss, sleep with it nestled under her chin, and fiercely defend it from Bluey, who had no interest whatsoever. It was a sweet lesson that love and attachment simply can't be bought.
Bluey's taste was refined, preferring Tiffany's puzzle toys over loud, chaotic ones. Grandmother loved watching him, so methodical and focused, his brow furrowed as he used his nose and paws to find hidden treats. Tiffany always seemed to understand, knowing her clever nephew needed mental stimulation just as much as Daisy needed physical exertion. For Tiffany, pictures on the phone just weren't enough. She announced a visit with a mission, a fall-themed photo shoot. She arrived with props in tow, tiny plaid scarves, a bale of hay from a craft store, and a collection of decorative pumpkins. Her goal was the perfect photo for their dedicated social media account, which she managed with the passion of a Hollywood agent. Grandmother just sighed, put the kettle on, and decided to go along with Tiffany's creative, slightly mad visions. Tiffany's vision for a calm pumpkin photo shoot with the two dogs quickly dissolved into pure chaos, while Bluey, ever the gentleman, sat perfectly still in his little plaid scarf with serene tolerance. Daisy saw things differently. To her, the pumpkins were a new type of ball, and the hay bale was a fantastic thing to shred. Tiffany scrambled to frame a shot, squeaking a toy for attention, as Grandmother tried to stop Daisy from eating a decorative gourd. It was a three-ring circus of cuteness. The calm, posed photo Tiffany envisioned never happened. Instead, she captured a moment of perfect, authentic chaos. Bluey, looking noble in his scarf, as Daisy, a blur of red fur, flew from a hay bale while a single pumpkin rolled past. It was messy and imperfect, but it was them, perfectly capturing Bluey's calm soul and Daisy's untamable spirit. Looking at her phone, Tiffany laughed. Okay, that one's even better. She had found the beauty in their real-life pandemonium. As Tiffany packed her props, Grandmother swept the scattered hay. Her quiet life, she felt, had been invaded by squeaky plastic and tiny sweaters. But seeing Daisy's genuine joy shredding a new toy, or Bluey's quiet focus on a puzzle, she knew. Every silly gift was her daughter's message. I'm thinking of you. I love them. And for that, she was endlessly grateful. As Tiffany drove away, her phone full of chaotic, cherished photos, a familiar warmth filled her. Her busy life meant she couldn't be there every day, but she fully embraced her special role, Aunt Tiffy, the fairy godmother. She showered them with gifts and captured their cutest moments for the world to see. Her love was loud, colorful, and came with free shipping. And in their blended family, it was just as essential as Kevin's quiet spreadsheets and Grandmother's constant loving presence. That night, with pumpkins put away and hay swept up, the house was quiet again. Bluey dozed in a plush new bed from Tiffany, and Daisy slept on a new squeaky toy, her old green ball beside her. It was all love, from high-quality food to tiny scarves, just expressed in different languages. While love was a strong foundation, Grandmother knew they needed structure for chaotic Daisy and even calm Bluey, so dog trainer Linda arrived. With a calm demeanor, high-value treats, and a quiet authority, she first learned their language before trying to teach hers. We never punish, Linda explained gently to Grandmother, holding up a small clicker. We make learning a fun game by rewarding the behavior we want. She'd click the exact moment they did something right, then give a treat. For grandmother, used to hearing no and bad dog, this was a revelation. It was about building them up, not correcting them. Linda started with Bluey and a simple sit. A calm, eager-to-please natural, he was highly trainable. She guided him down with a treat. The instant his bottom touched the floor, Linda clicked and praised. Yes, good sit. In just 3 repetitions, he'd figured out the game, offering the sit willingly with a proud, wagging tail. Daisy, a bundle of energy, would bounce for treats like a tiny pogo stick, but Linda just laughed, telling grandmother, "She's not being naughty. We just need to show her a new way that works." When treats failed, Linda realized Daisy's ultimate reward was her beloved ball. "Sit," she commanded, then clicked and threw it. It was a breakthrough. They had finally found her currency. Linda explained the real work was integrating training into daily life, and grandmother took this advice to heart. Mealtimes became mini sessions. Bluey would sit patiently, while Daisy offered a wiggly, trembling sit. This small change brought a new layer of order and communication. Bluey's calm, trusting nature made him a natural at stay. He would remain a furry statue of obedience while Linda walked the room, a concept of waiting completely alien to his poodle housemate. For Daisy, stay was the hardest concept, going against her poodle instincts and forward momentum. She'd hold Linda's command for half a second, then spring forward. Not disobedience, but an inability to contain herself. So Linda modified the training. It was a slow, painstaking process, celebrating micro-victories, rewarding even 1 second of stillness. A 3-second stay was a major triumph that called for a wild game of fetch. For Daisy, with her tendency to put everything in her mouth, the most important command Linda taught was leave it, a vital safety lesson. She'd cover a low-valued treat, say the command in a neutral tone, and the moment Daisy pulled back, she got a click and a much better reward from Linda's other hand. An unexpected benefit of the training with Linda was how it truly empowered grandmother. Instead of just reacting to chaos, she now had tools and a shared language. Learning to read their needs and communicate kindly built her confidence, deepening her bond with Bluey and Daisy. She was no longer just a loving caregiver. She was their respected leader. The real test came on a walk when another dog started barking aggressively. Daisy's tiny body tensed, her first instinct to bark right back. But grandmother, remembering Linda's advice, calmly said, "Watch me," holding a treat near her face. After a moment's hesitation, Daisy looked up. Click, and a treat. It was a huge victory. She had chosen her human over reacting. Bluey, of course, had ignored the other dog completely. After several months, Linda announced their graduation. "You have all the tools now," she told grandmother. "Just be consistent." She left a written guide and promised to be available. The structure she'd built remained, as she taught them how to truly learn together, transforming chaos into communication and teamwork. Even with training providing a new layer of order, the fundamental chaotic nature of life with 2 dogs remained. The day never began with an alarm clock, but with Daisy's insistent wet nudge on grandmother's cheek, precisely at 5:15 a.m. A soft woof would follow from Bluey. Too polite to lick, he'd just sit by the bed and stare intently until her eyes opened. Their internal clocks were synchronized, non-negotiable. The sun wasn't up, but the dogs were, and therefore, so was she. The first order of business was always the potty break, a carefully choreographed ballet of leashes and doors. Grandmother would let Daisy into the small backyard first, as her needs were always a bit more urgent. While Daisy zoomed about, grandmother clipped the leash to Bluey's harness for his leisurely constitution around the block. The whole process required perfect timing to avoid tangled leashes and tiny preventable disasters on the living room rug. From morning until bedtime, Daisy's primary mission was to start a game of fetch. She'd drop her ball in grandmother's lap at breakfast, nudge it under her hand as she read the newspaper, and place it on her pillow at night, a constant, hopeful offering. Convinced the little poodle must be part border collie for her relentless drive, Grandmother spent more time throwing that green ball than she'd ever imagined. It was Daisy's love language, and Grandmother did her best to speak it fluently.
Bluey's need for attention was quieter, but no less demanding. As a professional cuddler, if Grandmother sat down, he'd use his nose to nudge her hand onto his head for petting. If she stopped, he'd nudge again, more insistently. His love was a warm, heavy pressure against her leg, a silent, impossible-to-ignore request for constant affection from a furry, four-legged gravity well of neediness. Life with dogs, Grandmother learned, is a constant negotiation with dirt. A rainy day meant a painstaking ritual, wiping 4 paws for each dog to intercept a total of 16 muddy footprints before they decorated her clean floors. And the fur. Oh, the fur was everywhere. It created little tumbleweeds in the corners, wove itself into the fabric of the sofa, and even seasoned their food. Grandmother became a connoisseur of vacuum cleaners and lint rollers. Her home was no longer a pristine sanctuary. It was a lived-in, loved-in space, and the evidence was everywhere. Every day at 11:03 a.m., the household security alarm would sound. The alarm was Daisy, erupting in high-pitched, ferocious yaps at the mail carrier and his delivery of bills and catalogs. Bluey, her calm backup, stood right behind her, adding a few deep, authoritative woofs, just to show he meant business too. Before collecting the mail, Grandmother would always thank her tiny, formidable security team for their brave service. At day's end, after the last potty break and final ball toss, Grandmother would sink into her armchair, surprised by her profound exhaustion. It was the constant vigilance, the nonstop needs, managing 2 personalities, and the emotional labor of loving them. These tiny creatures who slept half the day filled every inch of her home and every single moment. Watching them sleep, she wouldn't trade the chaos. The hollow silence was gone, replaced by muddy paws and 5 a.m. wake-ups, but also by boundless affection, hilarious antics, and a pure love that filled every empty space. It was a beautiful noise. But some days, the chaos subsided. One afternoon, a wave of loneliness washed over Grandmother as she sat lost in memory. Bluey, sensing her mood, patted over and rested his head gently on her lap, offering his solid, warm presence without asking for pets. Then Daisy, for once without her ball, curled into a tight, supportive ball beside her. They knew. The dogs created entirely new reasons to celebrate. For the anniversary of the day Kevin brought Bluey home, Tiffany insisted on a gotcha gay party. She arrived with dog-friendly cupcakes, party hats with elastic strings, and a Happy Gotcha Day Bluey banner. Kevin and Grandmother laughed at the wonderful absurdity, but played along, putting the ridiculous hats on the dogs. They sang a clumsy happy birthday and watched Bluey delicately lick the frosting from his special cupcake. It was silly, and it was perfect. More than honoring the dogs, these celebrations brought Kevin and Tiffany together. Where busy lives once meant only holidays, they now met for parties or vet visits. They'd compare notes, Kevin on Bluey's diet, Tiffany on Daisy's outfit, and found a new appreciation for each other. The dogs were their common ground. Christmas morning perfectly captured this new family dynamic. Under the tree, the gift pile for Bluey and Daisy was laughably larger than anyone else's. Kevin gave practical gifts, a new orthopedic bed and a year's supply of dental chews, while Tiffany brought a mountain of squeaky toys and a festive reindeer costume. The family took turns opening gifts for the dogs, delighting in their excitement. Watching them tear into paper, or in Bluey's case, wait patiently,
had become the holiday's true main event. Tiffany insisted on a proper family photo, gathering grandmother and Kevin on the sofa with the dogs. After a monumental effort, especially with a Wrigley Daisy, they finally captured it. The framed photo on the mantelpiece was so telling. They were no longer three separate people, but a complete, unconventional family unit. Bluey and Daisy weren't just pets. They were the integral members who had completed the picture. Calm Bluey taught them quiet devotion. Energetic Daisy taught them joy in a simple, squeaky ball. As therapists, comedians, and coaches, they were a reason to get up and a comfort at night, recentering the entire family's universe. Kevin carefully researched pet insurance, comparing deductibles, annual limits, and coverage for hereditary conditions common in Pomeranians. He was planning for the what-ifs, ensuring a difficult choice would never be about money. Tiffany carefully curated an autumn photo, adjusting the brightness and adding a warm filter for the perfect caption. These two little pumpkins are ready for fall. October, pumpkin. Pomeranian, Toy Poodle, dogs of Instagram. Though it was taken in the living room, she tagged the local park. This was her creative outlet, a way to share their joy. The flood of likes and comments was validation, connecting her with a whole community who understood this very special brand of dog-obsessed love.
To create calm for guests, Linda taught the place command. Bluey picked it up quickly, but Daisy viewed her mat as a launch pad. With practice and high-value rewards, she learned to settle, a true game-changer for grandmother, giving her a tool to manage chaos.
It wasn't always high drama. Some of the best moments were the quietest. Grandmother would be in the kitchen chopping vegetables for dinner, the knife's rhythmic tap a familiar sound. Bluey dozed at her feet, a warm, furry weight, while Daisy methodically squeaked her green ball nearby, not for fetch, but for the sheer joy of the noise. In these moments, they were a settled, established pack, their lives interwoven in a comfortable tapestry of quiet companionship, the simple, profound reality of their shared world.
Bath time captured their opposing personalities perfectly. Bluey endured his with quiet, resigned dignity, standing still, shivering with a look of deep betrayal, but never fighting. Daisy, however, treated it as a personal affront, climbing the slippery tub and shaking soap everywhere, turning the bathroom into a wet, chaotic disaster zone for grandmother. The best part of bath time was the aftermath. After being towel dried, the zoomies would hit. They'd tear through the house at top speed like wild animals, banking off furniture and rolling on rugs. It was a joyful release of nervous energy, celebrating their freedom from the tub. Normally composed Bluey became a white blur, while Daisy grew even more frantic than usual. Grandmother just laughed, knowing this joyous explosion was a mandatory part of the bathing ritual.
Kevin made time for special outings with just Bluey. On quiet hiking trails, away from Daisy's frantic energy, Bluey's true Pomeranian nature would emerge. He'd trot confidently, tail held high, curious about every interesting smell. It was how Kevin and his original dog we connected, reinforcing their deep foundational bond. A quiet, masculine energy. A boy and his dog.
And Tiffany arranged girls' days with Daisy, the little poodle she'd brought into the family. Dressed in a tiny, fashionable harness, they'd visit a pet-friendly cafe patio. The little social butterfly charmed everyone, hopping into strangers' laps and performing her sit for tiny pieces of puppuccino foam. And Tiffany, the perfect stage mom, would beam with pride. It was their bonding time, just the two of them, in a flurry of social energy and adorable outfits.
Daisy, forever playful, would nip at Bluey's heels and try to steal his toys. But patient Bluey was her calm anchor, the steady presence for her bouncing, chaotic kite. In a rare burst of energy, Bluey would grab a toy and play bow for Daisy. Her ecstatic reaction sparked a spirited tug-of-war. These precious moments revealed their bond. Despite differences, they were a pack. They were family. Grandmother's quiet evening ritual was reading aloud. The dogs simply loved her voice. Bluey listened intently at her feet, while Daisy, exhausted from fetching, was lulled to sleep, a peaceful, shared moment that calmed their chaotic, love-filled day. Both dogs were masters of psychological warfare for food. At breakfast, they'd sit by grandmother's chair and deploy their puppy dog eyes. Bluey's stare was soft and soulful, a heartbreaking longing. Daisy's was direct and intense, feigning starvation. Silently, they focused on the toast, a strategy that usually won them a tiny shared crust. Life with Daisy was a series of tiny self-inflicted crises. A ball under the sofa was a 5-alarm fire. She'd whine and scratch, looking at grandmother with utter panic, her entire world trapped in darkness. So grandmother would get on her knees with a yardstick to retrieve the precious green orb. Daisy's relief was palpable, and fetch resumed. There's a particular peace that comes from watching them deeply asleep. Bluey lies on his back, paws curled and completely vulnerable, while Daisy's legs twitch on her side as she chases dream squirrels. This unguarded, trusting rest is the ultimate compliment, a silent testament that they feel utterly safe and cherished in their forever home. Some tasks were simply a 2-person job, and nail trimming was one of them. Bluey hated it, and his thick fur made it tricky to see. So during his weekly visit, Kevin would gently hold Bluey, speaking in a low, soothing voice, while grandmother's practiced hand clipped quickly and carefully. It was true teamwork. Another small example of sharing the necessary burdens of loving these animals. Every 6 weeks, Daisy the poodle got professionally groomed. Tiffany insisted on the best, a toy breed specialist. Excited, Daisy would prance in and emerge 3 hours later a different dog, a perfectly coiffed, fluffy cloud of red fur, often with a tiny festive bow. It was their loving division of labor to keep her coat healthy and mat-free. Kevin handled at-home maintenance, while Tiffany sponsored the luxury spa days. The first snowfall was simply magical. Bluey, with his thick double coat, was born for it, hopping through drifts, burying his nose in the powder, and coming up with a white dusted face. But tiny Daisy was less equipped. She'd get bogged down as ice balls formed between her paw pads. So grandmother bought her a tiny snowsuit and booties, a purchase Tiffany heartily approved of. The sight of the little red poodle waddling in her puffy winter gear was endlessly amusing. Thunderstorms were a source of anxiety. A distant rumble would send Bluey right to his safe space behind the toilet. Daisy, surprisingly, less scared of the noise, was more tuned in to the anxiety of grandmother and Bluey. She would stop playing to stick close to grandmother's side, her presence a quiet form of support. During every storm, the family group chat came alive with Kevin and Tiffany checking in. How are the babies holding up? It was a shared worry, a collective desire to protect them from their fears. To counteract the car's negative association, grandmother started taking them on rides just for fun. They would go to the drive-thru for a cup of whipped cream or to a park on the other side of town. Bluey, realizing they weren't headed to the vet, would relax and enjoy the sights and smells from the cracked open window. Daisy would stand with her paws on the center console, their tiny, furry co-pilot. These small adventures helped reshape the car from a box of anxiety into a vessel of fun, a chariot to new and exciting smells. A neighborhood cat often sunbathed on their front walk. From the window, Daisy would bark madly, but Bluey's relationship with the cat was different. On his leash, he'd approach slowly and respectfully. Sensing his calm energy, the cat wouldn't run. They would share a slow, careful nose-to-nose sniff, a moment of interspecies diplomacy. It was a testament to his gentle soul. he was a friend to all, a furry little ambassador of peace. One of Tiffany's gift boxes held both Daisy's new favorite thing and grandmother's new mortal enemy, a latex chicken toy with a terribly loud, obnoxious squeaker. Daisy was obsessed, carrying it everywhere and squeaking relentlessly for hours on end. The high-pitched, repetitive noise was enough to drive a person mad. Grandmother tried hiding it, but Daisy's detection skills were too good. She finally surrendered, accepting that the soundtrack to her life now included the death cry of a rubber chicken. It was the price of Daisy's happiness. Bluey, true bliss, was a belly rub. He'd ask by simply rolling onto his back with an expectant look, an invitation no one could refuse. As a hand rubbed his soft, warm belly, his back leg would begin its involuntary ecstatic kick. His eyes would close with a soft groan of pleasure. It was a moment of pure joy, of complete trust and contentment, where all the day's chaos simply melted away, leaving only pure, uncomplicated affection.
The family grew fluent in bark. They could tell Daisy's sharp, frantic, out now bark from her excited, someone's at the door bark. They also knew Bluey's single, deep woof was for attention or an empty water bowl. It was no longer noise, but a nuanced language showing just how deeply their lives had become intertwined.
Through a blend of frustrating messes and profound connection, of quiet companionship and utter chaos, life with Bluey and Daisy wasn't easy, but it was always full. They were the constant, furry heart of the family, a source of endless stories that brought everyone closer, proving that even the smallest adventures can inspire an immeasurable love. They were, quite simply, home.
Daisy's version of the family's hide-and-seek game was simply seek, with no plan. When grandmother hid and Kevin said, "Go find Grandma," Daisy would joyfully tear right past her multiple times before an accidental happy discovery. Bluey, in contrast, was the hide-and-seek champion. He'd methodically track Grandma's scent with a detective's quiet confidence, not Daisy's frantic speed. He would inevitably find her, nudging her hiding spot with a soft huff of success, a perfect demonstration of his intelligent, thoughtful nature.
To combat the overwhelming toy clutter, grandmother took Linda's advice and began a clever toy rotation. She gathered half of the toys, stored them in a closet, and would swap them out every 2 weeks. When the old toys reappeared, the dogs reacted as if it were Christmas morning all again. A squeaky platypus, ignored for weeks, was suddenly the most exciting object on the planet. This simple strategy kept the toys novel and exciting, cut the daily floor clutter in half, and was a small victory in the ongoing war against chaos.
Though Kevin was Bluey's original owner, a profound bond had formed between the gentle Pomeranian and grandmother. He became her little shadow, following her from room to room, lying on the bath mat while she showered, sitting on the kitchen rug while she cooked. He wasn't demanding attention, simply drawing comfort from her proximity. She was his calm center, and he was her constant furry companion. Theirs was a friendship built on thousands of quiet, ordinary moments, a gentle, steady love.
Daisy had an almost psychic sense for departures, feeling the subtle energy shift long before shoes or keys. She'd stop playing to shadow you with concern, her biggest fear being left behind. This anxious habit, trying to sneak out or sitting forlornly by the window, revealed her deep attachment and desire for every adventure.
To ease their departure anxiety, grandmother and Linda started a ritual, a special, long-lasting chew treat, but only when leaving. This canine psychology trick reframed the event as a high-value reward. Soon, her coat sparked excitement, not worry. And while it didn't completely erase Daisy's anxiety, it made everyone's life easier. If departures were anxious, the returns were pure ecstasy. Whether she was gone for 10 minutes or 3 hours,
the welcome was always the same. The key turning in the lock sparked a chorus of excited yips, followed by a flurry of joy. Daisy leaping, Bluey spinning, their tails wagging so hard their whole body shook. It was a daily, powerful reminder of a love so pure it could erase any trouble from the day. A perfect Sunday afternoon held no grand plans, just the family existing in a state of shared contentment. Grandmother would be in her armchair with a crossword puzzle, the television humming softly. If Kevin was over, you'd find him reading on the sofa, with Bluey asleep on his feet. Daisy would be dozing in a patch of sunlight, her green ball tucked under her chin. The silence wasn't empty, it was full. The comfortable, easy silence of a family that needed nothing more than to simply be together. For Grandmother's birthday, Tiffany commissioned a custom oil painting of Bluey and Daisy. Using her dozens of photos and detailed notes, the artist created a perfect formal portrait. It captured Bluey's soulful, gentle eyes and Daisy's mischievous expression, treating them with the dignity of historical figures. Grandmother hung it in the most prominent spot. Art, immortalized as family history. Sometimes Grandmother would remember her quiet, orderly house and her initial worry about handling the energy of a puppy like Daisy. Now she couldn't imagine the silence. The chaos had become her new normal, the dog hair a new kind of glitter. These two little souls had stretched her heart and tested her patience, filling her life with a love she hadn't known she was missing. The messy, exhausting journey had been worth every single moment.
Bluey, the creature of comfort, turned 3 circles to curl into a neat donut, nose to tail. Daisy slept with wild abandon, sprawled on her back, paws in the air, utterly vulnerable. Grandmother photographed their contrasting styles, a daily reminder of their deeply different personalities.
Whenever Grandmother tried a little gardening, she had 2 eager but utterly useless assistants. Bluey was her calm shadow, helping by politely sniffing every single plant she touched. Daisy's help, however, was more destructive. She saw fresh soil as a personal invitation to dig, sending dirt flying from tiny, powerful paws. She'd even pounce on the watering can stream to bite the water. Grandmother's peaceful time always devolved into stop Daisy from destroying the petunias, a game she rarely won. Ever the practical problem solver, Kevin saw how Grandmother bent down to fill the dog's bowls. So on his next visit, he brought 2 custom-built wooden stands from his workshop, raised to the perfect height for better posture and digestion. He'd even burned their names, Bluey and Daisy, into the wood, a thoughtful gift from quiet observation, making life easier for his mother and her furry charges. Feeling disconnected during her long workdays, Tiffany got a high-tech pet camera. From an app on her phone, she could watch Bluey and Daisy, talk to them through a small speaker, and dispense treats remotely. She'd check in during a boring meeting, delighting in seeing them sleep or play. Sometimes she'd send a treat for no reason, sparking happy confusion in the quiet house. It was her technological tether, a small dose of their chaotic joy from miles away. The dog park was a lesson in social dynamics. Calm and gentle Bluey was the diplomat. He'd approach other dogs with a soft, wagging tail for the customary sniffing ritual before moving on. Daisy, on the other hand, was the life of the party, but she lacked subtlety. She would charge into a group, barking excitedly, trying to start a chase with everyone at once. Grandmother always watched her carefully, ready to intervene if her boundless enthusiasm overwhelmed a shyer dog. An autumn walk was always a sensory delight. The crisp air was full of new smells, and the crunchy leaves underfoot, well, they were a source of endless fascination. Bluey would walk through them with a dignified crunch, but Daisy saw them as the greatest playground ever invented. She would leap into piles of raked leaves with utter abandon, sending them flying into the air.
She'd burrow underneath until only her tail was visible, then explode out in a brilliant shower of red and gold. It was a moment of pure seasonal bliss, a beautiful reminder to find joy in simple, fleeting things. One day, Grandmother woke with a bad cold settled in her chest, and the dogs knew instantly. The usual 5:15 a.m. face licking was replaced by a quiet presence. Daisy, forgoing any demands for fetch, brought her green ball, laid it gently on the bed, and curled up at her feet. Bluey lay beside her, a comforting weight. All day they became her quiet, furry nurses, their empathy a powerful medicine. The toy basket was no longer just clutter. It was a vocabulary lesson waiting to happen. Grandmother's day always ended with the same quiet rituals of care. After a final potty break, she would check that their water bowl was full, tuck a blanket around Bluey, and place Daisy's abandoned ball in the poodle's bed for morning. More than anything, Bluey and Daisy taught their family to live in the present. Dogs don't carry yesterday's mistakes or tomorrow's anxieties. Only the delicious smell of breakfast, the joy of a thrown ball, the comfort of a warm lap. This was a furry reminder for Grandmother, Kevin, and Tiffany to put down the phone, step away from worries, and find the joy in the now. Vacation planning had changed. Instead of exotic locations, the primary search filter was pet-friendly, which led them to a dog-friendly cabin by a lake for a week each summer. The logistical challenge of packing dog beds, special food, and a car full of toys was immense, but it was worth every effort to see Bluey on forest trails and Daisy chase sticks into the shallow water. Their joy was the family's joy. Daisy, a city dog, was hesitant at the vast lake, barking at the small waves from the shore. But when Kevin threw her ball just inches into the water, her obsession overrode her fear. She tentatively stepped in, then pounced. Though surprised by the splash, she got the ball. After that, there was no stopping her. She became a tiny, fearless swimmer, a little red water bug paddling furiously on a mission. While Daisy conquered the lake, Bluey found his own vacation bliss right on the cabin's screened-in porch. He would spend hours there on a cool patch of floor, simply watching the world go by. For him, this was a sensory paradise, watching the squirrels, listening to the birds, and sniffing the pine-scented breeze. He didn't need frantic activity. His joy came from quiet observation, from being immersed in the calm, natural rhythm of the woods. He was a creature of peace, and here, surrounded by the quiet sounds of nature, he was perfectly at home. In the evenings at the cabin, the family would gather around a small campfire, sharing stories with the warmth of the flames on their faces. Safely on leashes, the dogs were mesmerized by the crackling fire. Bluey would be dozing at Kevin's feet, while Daisy, curled in Tiffany's lap, growled softly at a popping ember. These were the cherished memories, the simple act of being together under the stars, the two dogs an essential part of their circle of warmth and light. Of course, the one downside to their wonderful country adventures was the inevitable mess. After a long walk through the woods, the dogs would return happily covered in burrs, twigs, and a fair amount of mud. And so, the post-walk cleanup became a cherished family affair. Kevin would gently hold Daisy still, while Tiffany carefully picked each stubborn burr from her curly fur. Grandmother, meanwhile, would use a special comb on Bluey's thick undertoat. It was tedious work, but they always did it together, turning a simple chore into another quiet moment of shared care.
They knew that loving dogs meant embracing the dirt and the cleanup that came with a life so very well lived. "Oh, I'm so sorry, my love," always got two very different responses. Bluey's forgiveness was instant and total, a gentle lick. But Daisy, our dramatist, would limp theatrically for sympathy, recovering miraculously only for a treat. Pure praise and pure theater. Bluey and Daisy became minor neighborhood celebrities, adored by all the local children. Bluey would sit patiently for every pet from his small admirers, while Daisy was always happy to oblige a new playmate who wanted to throw the ball. Grandmother watched from her porch, proud of her well-behaved ambassadors. They were a small, positive force in the community, a furry bridge to her neighbors. They didn't just enrich her life, they enriched the lives of those around her.
Daisy had a peculiar, mischievous habit. She'd steal single socks from the laundry, not to destroy them, but to collect them like treasured prizes in her bed, keeping grandmother on a frustrating but harmless sock hunt. While Daisy was a bundle of energy, Bluey's calm presence was her anchor. When she got too wound up, she'd simply lie near him, her calm harbor in a storm. His mere presence was enough, a silent testament to their bond, a self-regulating system of chaos and calm. The story of Bluey and Daisy wasn't one of grand adventures, but of small, everyday moments, vet visits, training sessions, and endless games of fetch. Woven through it all was a powerful love that healed a grandmother's loneliness, gave her children a shared purpose, and made their families stronger than ever. The life-altering magic of two small dogs who simply loved them back. Months later, Linda called to check in. "How are my star pupils?" she asked warmly. Grandmother was thrilled to give a glowing report. Daisy's stay was now a solid 10 seconds, and Bluey's leave it had saved him from a dropped grape. The training had become a new language they all spoke fluently, a lovely reminder of the foundation Linda helped build. When Tiffany worked from her mother's house for a day, her professional world collided with the dog chaos. During an important video conference, Daisy, holding her squeaky chicken, demanded a game of fetch by leaping into Tiffany's lap and squeaking it directly into the laptop's microphone. As her colleagues erupted in laughter, Tiffany tried to professionally handle the fluffy, squeaking interruption. It was a hilarious, humbling reminder that for dogs, there is no distinction between work time and playtime. In his quiet way, Kevin's dedication deepened. He read a study on canine cognition and learned how dogs process our expressions and tone, having a dedicated voice area in their brains, similar to humans. Science affirmed what he knew in his heart. His bond with Bluey was a real two-way communication, making his commitment feel even more profound. Thanks to their 5:15 a.m. wake-up calls, Grandmother began to appreciate a part of the day she once slept through, the sunrise. After their morning potty break, she'd sit by the window with her tea, the two dogs settled at her feet, and they would watch together as the dark sky slowly blushed with pink and orange. It was a moment of profound peace before the day's chaos truly began. In their relentless demand, the dogs had unintentionally given her the gift of these quiet, beautiful beginnings. During the holidays, Grandmother learned that wrapping presents was a full participation sport. The moment she laid out the paper, Daisy saw a fantastic, crinkly new mat to pounce on. She would help by attacking the sticky tape, getting it stuck to her nose, and chasing ribbons mid-curl. Meanwhile, Bluey supervised from a safe distance, occasionally sniffing a bow with polite interest. The presents ended up slightly wrinkled and covered in fine fur, but they were always wrapped with an abundance of chaotic love. One evening, as Grandmother teared up at a sad movie, Bluey woke from his doze. He crawled right over,
put his paws on her shoulder and began gently licking her tears. He didn't understand the movie, only her sadness, a friend offering simple, perfect comfort. Dinner time was always preceded by the ritual of the dinner dance. The moment grandmother moved towards the dog food container, Daisy would spin in frantic, excited circles, letting out little yips of joy. Bluey's dance was more subdued, a little two-step shuffle on his hind legs, his paws tapping on the floor. Their boundless enthusiasm for the predictable was a daily lesson in gratitude that never failed to make grandmother smile.
For grandmother's birthday, Kevin and Tiffany collaborated on a cake safe for both humans and dogs. Using an online recipe with carrots, applesauce, and yogurt frosting, they spent a rare afternoon laughing as they baked together. The cake wasn't beautiful, but it was made with love. That evening, everyone, grandmother, Kevin, Tiffany, Bluey, and Daisy, enjoyed a slice. It was a perfect symbol of unity, every family member sharing the very same treat.
Grandmother often thought about the sounds of her house. Before, the dominant sounds were a ticking clock or the refrigerator's hum. But now, the soundscape was so much richer. The gentle click-clack of paws on the hardwood floor, the soft jingle of a collar tag, a toy's rhythmic squeak, and the contented sigh of a sleeping dog. These were the sounds of life, of companionship. The dogs had filled her quiet house not just with chaos, but with a constant, comforting presence she could hear in every room. The silence was gone, and she never wanted it back. Ultimately, Bluey and Daisy's greatest gift was unconditional love. They didn't care if grandmother had a bad hair day, Kevin was stressed, or Tiffany felt down. Their love was not conditional on success, appearance, or mood. It was a constant, steady force, a grounding and healing power in a complicated world. They were the heart of the home, a love asking for nothing in return. Their family held a quiet reflection, not a big party like Bluey's Gotcha Day. Looking at photos from that first week, they saw how the tiny, timid girl who hid behind furniture had become the confident, chaotic queen of the household. She had brought a whirlwind of energy, a dose of daily humor, and had become Bluey's inseparable, if annoying, little sister. Their family was now simply unimaginable without her. Bluey had appointed himself household supervisor, observing grandmother's chores from a respectful distance. When she vacuumed, he'd watch her every move from the sofa, safe from the noisy monster. As she folded laundry, he'd doze at her feet, a warm, furry presence. Though he wasn't helping, his quiet companionship made the mundane tasks feel less lonely. He was her silent partner, his steady presence a constant source of quiet support. In a surprising twist, Daisy, who was not a fan of baths, absolutely adored going through the automatic car wash. While poor Bluey would hunker down on the floor, nervous about all the strange noises and moving brushes, Daisy would hop right up on the center console, utterly transfixed. She'd watch the colorful soaps and giant spinning brushes with wide-eyed wonder, her little head tilting with curiosity. It was the one part of a car journey she enjoyed more than anything. For her, it was a mesmerizing light and sound show, a theme park ride made just for her.
Inspired by an online trend, Tiffany introduced the family to barcuterie boards for special occasions. They would arrange an elaborate display of dog-safe treats, carrot sticks, apple slices, small dollops of peanut butter, and special dog biscuits. Bluey would approach with delicate precision, selecting one item at a time, while Daisy dove in face first, trying to eat everything at once. It was a silly, over-the-top tradition that brought them all together in the kitchen, just for their four-legged family. When a kind neighbor passed away,
Grandmother mourned. Sensing her grief, Bluey rested his head on her knee, and Daisy curled by her side, her two silent, furry grief counselors. What do dogs dream of? Grandmother would watch them sleep and wonder. She imagined Bluey's dreams were calm and pleasant, chasing butterflies in a sunny field, or receiving endless belly rubs from Kevin. Daisy's dreams, she suspected, were more chaotic and action-packed. An infinite hallway with a never-stopping ball, or a mountain made entirely of squeaky chickens. Their twitching paws and soft whimpers were a nightly cinema of their subconscious worlds, playing out their deepest desires and purest joys. Some afternoons, Grandmother would doze off, her book sliding from her lap. Bluey would settle at her feet, and Daisy on the ottoman, the whole family recharging together in a shared, peaceful nap. One evening, Kevin shared videos of Bluey as a tiny puppy on his old laptop. They watched a clumsy ball of white and brown fluff navigate stairs and discover his reflection for the first time. The dignified Bluey watched with a tilted head, trying to recognize the baby on screen. It was a sweet, nostalgic journey that deepened their connection, a reminder of how much he'd grown. That ecstatic welcome wasn't just for Grandmother. Kevin and Tiffany always received it too. The dogs didn't care if they were late, had a bad day, or forgot a toy. Their arrival was the most wonderful event, a powerful emotional anchor of pure, unconditional love. Looking at the sleeping dogs, cared for by her loving hands, fed with food from Kevin, and surrounded by gifts from Tiffany, Grandmother felt a wave of profound gratitude. This was her back, a strange, multi-generational, multi-species family, bound by responsibility, laughter, and the fierce love for two little animals who had rescued them all. The house was messy, her schedule chaotic, but her heart had never been so full. Bringing in the groceries was an all-paws-on-deck affair, at least in Daisy's mind. With her tail wagging furiously, she would help by intensely sniffing every single bag. Her self-appointed job was inspector, ensuring no unauthorized carrots or contraband lettuce made it inside without her approval. Occasionally, she'd try to gently pull a loaf of bread from a bag, an attempt at helping to unpack that was always gently thwarted. Bluey, meanwhile, would watch the proceedings from a safe distance, wisely staying out of the way. A day of torrential rain was a day of shared misery. With a proper walk impossible, the dog's pent-up energy was palpable. Daisy would stand at the door, whining mournfully and glaring at Grandmother as if she personally controlled the weather. Bluey would sigh dramatically, slumping into his bed with a look of profound boredom. The whole house felt sluggish and grumpy. To combat the gloom, Grandmother would start a vigorous fetch session down the hallway, a temporary solution for the cabin fever gripping their tiny household. Tiffany spent half an hour trying to teach Daisy a new spin trick from YouTube, luring her with a treat. Daisy, however, had other ideas. She'd jump, offer a sit, and then try to run off with it. The chaotic, failed session ended with everyone laughing, a sweet reminder that Linda's invaluable training was a magic touch not everyone possessed. For Kevin, grooming Bluey was a quiet, meditative bonding ritual. His gentle, slow hand used specialized brushes to prevent mats and shedding in the thick Pomeranian coat. Bluey, loving the attention, would lie patiently, eyes closed in contentment. This was love expressed through meticulous care. One day, the TV remote went missing. The family searched everywhere, blaming each other. After an hour of fruitless searching, Grandmother happened to glance at Bluey's dog bed. There, tucked neatly beside him, was the remote control. He hadn't chewed it or damaged it. he'd simply collected it for a nap. It was a completely uncharacteristic act of minor mischief from the usually perfect dog. The family couldn't be mad. They were just too amused by the mystery's gentle, furry culprit. When Daisy was at her most excited, she would let out a play sneeze. As Linda explained, it's how dogs signal their roughhousing is all in good fun. So when Daisy sneezed on a new toy from Tiffany, Grandmother knew it was the highest possible compliment. A sneeze saying, "This is the best game ever." Tiffany's creative Christmas idea was making holiday ornaments with the dog's paw prints using a pet-safe ink pad. It was a messy challenge with wiggling Daisy. More ink landed on Tiffany, but calm Bluey offered a perfect, clear print on the first try. The finished ornaments, each with a tiny paw and name, became treasured yearly reminders. On a quiet winter evening, a heavy, silent snow began to fall. Grandmother turned off the television and the lights, and in the dim living room, the family sat simply watching the big, soft flakes drift down. The dogs sensed the peaceful mood. Not demanding play or attention, they sat by the window with her, two furry silhouettes watching the world turn white. In that moment, there was no chaos, only a shared sense of wonder and a deep, comfortable silence. Despite her tiny size, Daisy was Bluey's protective bodyguard. If a larger dog got too rough, she'd charge in, a comical, barking whirlwind of fierce loyalty. Bluey rarely needed it, but her instinct to defend her brother showed their bond. She might annoy him at home, but always had his back. A year after their first dramatic visit, the annual checkup felt entirely different. The routine was the same, but Bluey, though still anxious, walked in with more confidence. Daisy, a happy bundle of energy, remembered Dr. Evans and greeted her with licks. They sat, they stayed, and accepted their shots with far less drama. They had all grown. The vet visit was no longer a terrifying ordeal, just a normal, necessary part of a life built on love, trust, and a whole lot of training.
Bluey was a master of selective hearing on sunny backyard days. When Grandmother called, he'd play deaf, suddenly sniffing the grass and angling his body away, a quiet, passive resistance. It never lasted long. A second, firmer call always worked, revealing his gentle plea for just 5 more minutes. Every evening after dinner, a soft contentment would settle over the house. It always began with one of the dogs letting out a long, satisfied sigh, triggering a sweet chain reaction. Bluey would sigh, then Daisy would sigh, and soon Grandmother would find herself sighing too. It was their small, shared ritual, an unspoken acknowledgement that bellies were full, the pack was together, and they were safe. Daisy could always find the one muddy puddle in a dry yard. Well, it tested Grandmother's patience and towels. For Daisy, 4 muddy paws just meant a day well lived. When visitors came, Bluey was the polite head of the welcoming committee. While Daisy might bark or jump, Bluey approached calmly, tail wagging gently. He'd wait patiently for a hand, offer a polite sniff or gentle lick, and then retreat, the perfect little host. As Bluey got a little older, jumping onto the high sofa took more of an effort, so ever-observant Kevin designed a small carpeted ramp. On a Saturday afternoon, the whole family pitched in to build it. Kevin cut the wood, Tiffany picked a carpet color that matched the decor, and Grandmother provided loving supervision and snacks. Even the dogs helped by sniffing the materials. The finished ramp was a symbol of their collective love and foresight, a small adjustment to ensure Bluey's comfort for years to come. A project built by the pack, for the pack. The vacuum cleaner was Daisy's mortal enemy, and her greatest fascination. As soon as Grandmother brought out the noisy monster, Daisy would begin her ferocious assault, barking and retreating, yet compelled to follow it everywhere. It was their weekly dramatic dance, her solemn duty to protect the home from the roaring beast that ate crumbs. In the quiet of the day, there were moments
moments, Bluey would stop everything, walk over to grandmother, and just stare into her eyes. It wasn't a look asking for food or a walk, but one of pure, profound connection. In his soft, intelligent eyes, she saw a gratitude and love that needed no words, a silent thank you for his safe home, his comfortable bed, his family. And she knew the love she gave was received and returned 1,000 times over. Our whirlwind Daisy wasn't a cuddler, but as she matured, one quiet evening, she curled into Tiffany's lap and fell asleep. Tiffany barely breathed. It was a milestone, a year in the making, a new, deeper bond built on quiet affection. The photos on the mantelpiece told their story. What began as one formal family portrait was now lovingly surrounded by smaller, candid shots. Daisy covered in mud, Bluey sleeping with the TV remote, the whole family at the lake, the dogs in their Christmas costumes. It was a gallery of their life together, a visual history of the love and laughter these two dogs had brought into their home. They weren't just living day to day. They were building a legacy of memories, a treasure trove of small, perfect moments that would be cherished for a lifetime. In the end, it all comes down to this: a warm living room filled with the quiet sounds of a sleeping family. Here, a calm Pomeranian, a tiny poodle, and the grandmother who loves them more than words can ever say. They are supported by a son who provides, a daughter who delights, and a patient trainer who taught them to speak the same language. This has been a story about two dogs, yes, but it is truly a story of how love, in its many forms, practical, exuberant, patient, and constant, is what builds a home. And at the very center of that home are Bluey and Daisy. Two small, perfect hearts.